In every great performance, there's a moment before the first note. A breath. A shift in the air. The world opens. Sound surges forward. This season traces America's musical threads, woven by composers born here and those who chose to call it home. Journeys across continents, cultures, and imagination. And the music that connects us all.
Excuse me. Thank you, Jaime. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you all kindly. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I'd just like to begin by following on from John's warm words of welcome and picking out Phil and Mary Lyons. Where are you? Are you here somewhere in the... You're up there, Phil and Mary, for the support of this orchestra, for endowing the Artistic and Music Director Chair. Many thanks and a warm welcome. And to my friend and one of the great composers of our times, James Newton Howard. You're here somewhere. Where are you? Where are you, James? He's somewhere in the audience. He's probably being modest as ever. Thank you, James. We'll be learning how we're going to be featuring some of his music in the coming season. He's a board member of the Symphony, one of America's and the world's great composers. Welcome, thank you for being here today. And finally, to the musicians of the orchestra who've joined us, who just performed at the beginning, thank you so much for that, and a warm welcome. We're going to have so much fun next season. Maria, thank you for being here.
It is my pleasure, my honor, and I am absolutely thrilled. So again, welcome to everyone here. And Alexander, how exciting to have you with us. I mean, this is just an incredible moment for all of us.
I had to listen to my own voice, though, which is a complete nightmare. But
You
in the voiceover...
You have a lovely voice.
Oh, thank you.
Never doubt that for half a second. So, obviously, we are here today to celebrate the 26-27 classical series. And this will be your first season as role of artistic and music director. A defining moment in your career, of course, but one here that the Pacific Symphony has been anxiously awaiting since 2024. We are so thrilled. So bravo,
Thank
bravo.
you, thank you.
Now, in planning this season, we've seen little hints and tips. Obviously, John mentioned, and we saw the wonderful video. But when you were programming this classical season, what are some of the overarching themes and stories and moments that mark the occasion for you?
So when I'm thinking about seasons, I like to think in a kind of 20,000 feet style first. I like to think about sort of big picture themes, ideas that might course through a season. And sometimes they're defined by moments in history, or they might be defined by ideas in our society and our environment. And in this case, of course, July 4th of this year, we celebrate USA 250. We celebrate it, we explore it, we think about where we stand now, what this adventure has been, what it has meant for the world as well. And I was anxious and eager to dig into that, look at the artistic side of it, and also look at artistic expressions of some of the ideas that perhaps underscore USA 250 and the Declaration of Independence. So that's one big theme that accompanies us. That is expressed in the composers that you'll hear on our stage. So we will be exploring composers both past and present who called and call the United States their home. Some of them are a surprise. There'll be names like Copland and Bernstein and Gershwin and Florence Price, names that you might immediately associate with the United States. But then there'll be composers like Rachmaninoff and Stravinsky and Bartók, Korngold, where you might think, well, they weren't American composers, but they in fact all ended their lives as American citizens. They came over here and built their lives here, and they contributed to the American artistic story. They will also be featured on our season. And among the, at my count, 17 living composers who are going to be celebrated on our 26-27 season, I think it's 13 of them are American composers as well. So when we meet here in this space and other spaces that we perform in, we'll be listening to a huge variety of musical voices from across many hundreds of years of history. But each of those voices contributes and has contributed to the American story in art. Similarly, we'll be welcoming soloists to our stages who are part of the tapestry of the American story. So, for example, opening night, Joshua Bell will be with us, Manny Axe will be joining us, Karen Slack will be joining us, and the list goes on and on. These consummate American artists who'll be with us. Our opera for this season is something a little bit different. We're going to be performing for you Nixon in China by John Adams. John Adams in 2027 himself turns 80, but this is, I was thinking, how can we find an opera that digs into an American story? And this is as good as it gets. That journey that Richard Nixon took to China in 1972, I think some of the ideas behind it are as important to think about nowadays as they ever have been. And this opera is one of the modern greats. It's English language, it's immediately accessible for audiences. You can really chart and follow the story as John Adams, in his amazing musical language, which is again so immediately accessible and compelling, he explores not just a moment in history and a moment in politics, but actually the psyche and the dynamism of Mao, of Nixon, of their spouses, and how their personalities were brought to bear and how important that was in that amazing moment of history. So there's the composers, there's the soloists, there's the opera, and then there's also some major highlights artistically that again speak to the American story, like Mahler's Second Symphony, with which we'll be opening our classics cycle. And Mahler, again, you think, well, Central European composer, what's he got to do with America? But of course, 1907 to 1911, he lived in New York. He worked with the New York Philharmonic at the Met as a hugely influential conductor and artist. And in so many ways, the legacy of those few years that he spent there still radiate towards us today. Mahler is beloved in the United States, partly because of the fact that he found an artistic home here. So that will be very special. So USA 250. And then tangentially related to it, but for me very centrally, is another celebration which occurs in 2027, namely the 200th anniversary of Beethoven's death. Now, how does that connect with USA 250? Well, Beethoven was a child of the Enlightenment, as were the philosophers and political thinkers and activists who founded this nation. And coursing through his artistic output, and particularly in his symphonies, and what makes Beethoven so extraordinary and so impactful, is his humanistic and his political drive. Music for him was not always just about making beautiful sounds that move people. It was about bringing a message to people and changing society, much in the same way that the founding fathers wanted to change the world with the Declaration of Independence, and did change the world. So there's a symbiotic relationship for me between that moment in American history and that moment in musical history, where Beethoven put down on paper this journey from his first through his ninth symphony and made a statement so radical, so powerful, not just about music, but about humanity and optimism and hope, and saying we can aspire for better, we can change the world, that is directly linked with that foundational American concept. And so in 2027, the orchestra and I will undertake within the course of 2 weeks a cycle of all 9 of Beethoven's symphonies,
Wow.
including also
Goosebump moment.
a wonderful play by a friend of mine, Tama Matheson, who is an absolute genius. He's a writer, a director, an actor who grew up with music and is passionate about creating storytelling and plays that offer access into music. And he's created this absolutely beautiful play about Beethoven's life. And I'll be up on stage here with the orchestra as he and several other actors and a chorus tell the story of Beethoven's life with music. That will be right in the middle of this cycle. So USA 250, Beethoven 200 are yoked together in our exploration of ultimately the idea of hope through the season, hope through political activism and hope through music.
All right, everyone take a deep breath. That sounds profound and absolutely not to be missed. But you also have a lot more on the docket. You have a lot of other programs this season. 8 weeks of subscription programs with a repertoire and artists that you will be collaborating with. And those are very exciting as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of walk through a little bit in order, which is why I have cue cards, because there's also going to be some images up here. Starting the season with our first subscription is Mahler's Second Symphony, and we have, of course, Pacific Chorale on stage with us. That is it's such a wonderful relationship. Rob Eistedt is a genius. It's such a great chorus, and the fact that we, Pacific Symphony, are able to perform alongside them to celebrate that great vocal repertory, which I find it speaks so immediately to audiences, to me at least, because you have all the beautiful abstraction of music, but then sometimes that direct association of word. That's going to feature very largely in our lives in the coming years, that relationship with Pacific Chorale. But they join us on stage, 2 of the world's finest vocal soloists, Mia Persson, soprano, and Dame Sarah Connolly will be singing the solo parts in Mahler's Second Symphony. They are among the very finest exponents of our time. They're quite extraordinary singers. And it's a work that, as many of you will know, it touches on, I think, everything that makes symphonic and choral music so special for me. I mentioned the idea of hope. Mahler was somebody like Beethoven, but in a different way, who, when he was writing music, was searching for the most profound, metaphysical, philosophical answers. And he posed the questions first. And in the first 3 movements of his Second Symphony, we start in darkness. We start in a dark C minor. You feel the weight and pressure of life and doubt on your shoulders. In beguilingly dark music that, as so often again with Mahler, feels like a kind of seductive funeral march, and has that extraordinary bandwidth of some of the loudest and most sort of immediate music you can think of, coupled up within a few seconds with some of the most intimate chamber music sounds. And that builds over 3 movements of questions about life, moments of light and dark, to an attempted answer. And ultimately, as the singers come in and the chorus enters, Mahler offers us, on a cerebral level in the words, but much more importantly, which is why we're in a concert hall, through the music, something that speaks deeper, more profoundly, more clearly to our souls. He offers us a vision of absolution in that Second Symphony, a vision of hope that ever since I first performed the piece, I'm getting older, a couple of decades ago. It used to be 5 years ago, and now it's a couple of decades ago. Honestly, I've carried it with me as a battery, something that supports me and offers me so much resilience and hope. And I always hope that when I perform this piece of music, that at least some of you, and if not all of you, will leave the concert hall feeling like you've had an experience for life, something that touched you in a way you can't necessarily immediately express, but you know you've been touched and changed by it because it is so powerful. So we begin the season with that, and I feel that it encapsulates so much of what I want us to explore about that notion of USA 250 and the humanist aspects of Beethoven's work. Then we have the Beethoven Revolution Festival, which will be later in the season. I've already spoken about that a little bit. As an aside, it will be an amazing journey for us all, and I would really encourage you, not just from a commercial sense, because it's nice for us to sell tickets, but far more importantly, on a human level, if you can fit it into your lives to come and listen to each of those concerts within not very much time, just about the time it takes to watch one Netflix series. Literally, you can experience one of the cultural pinnacles of human history. Mm-hmm. It's like Machu Picchu or the Great Wall of China or the pyramids. And we're going to bring it to you. You don't need to get a passport or travel. But my hope is that together we will take this journey from his first symphony through the second, the third, the Eroica, then the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. You know the joke, by the way. How many symphonies did Beethoven write? Well, there's the third, the fifth, the seventh, the ninth, 4. But we can take this journey together, see how he changed musically, and see how his message changed, how it grew, how he moved from a musical exponent to something far deeper. And of course, we will surround it with lots of opportunities to learn more, to experience more. But if I can encourage you to do anything in that season, it's to take that journey with us. It will be a very important journey for me in the orchestra too. Mm-hmm. Because radiating both backwards towards Mozart and Bach and Haydn, and then forwards towards all of the more romantic and late romantic repertory into contemporary repertory. If we can refine our articulation, our intonation, our phrasing, our music making together in Beethoven, then we're well set for what is to come. So it's both a musical, a philosophical, a metaphysical experience, and also a team-building exercise for me and the orchestra as we start this journey together. It'll be a special moment. Nixon in China, I've mentioned. We can dig into that a little bit more. One of the several of the aspects I'm excited about. Firstly, our partnership with the Nixon Library around the corner. It makes all the more sense for us as a community in this year to celebrate this amazing opera, to celebrate this great American composer, John Adams, but dig into Nixon as a personality. And we have Elkanah Pulitzer directing for us, who has directed it before. She's absolutely brilliant, and I can't wait to work with her. James Ennis joins us for a program that highlights America's film music tradition, and this is where the music of our friend, the brilliant James Newton Howard, will be featured. We'll be performing his second violin concerto written for James. I had the great joy of performing it recently with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra on a little tour. We were in Edinburgh and Glasgow and Perth, I think, and that's where I had the pleasure for the first time of meeting James. I was James Newton Howard, that is. James Ennis I've known for decades. Again, I'm getting old. But
you cannot say that.
Yeah, James Newton Howard, who is, of course, a legend of our time. The number of movies that he's scored is extraordinary. I thought, gosh, what's he going to be like? He must be, pretty... if you make it in that industry and you've had all that success, you're going to be pretty confident, probably bordering on arrogant. And what I met was just the most charming, humble, warm-hearted, inquisitive man. And it was one of the great pleasures of recent times for me to meet him. And I look forward to continuing that friendship and that relationship. And I thank him for the music, because this concerto that he's written, as with his first concerto, is very, very special indeed. James Ennis plays the heck out of it, if I may say. So I'm looking forward to that. And on that program, we feature Richard Strauss's Also sprach Zarathustra. Richard Strauss is a composer who's been very important to me. I've recorded a cycle of his tone poems with more to follow. You can find them on all good streaming services. And Zarathustra is among one of those that has been recently released. And Of course, the music at the opening of Zarathustra has been used in films and in television for many years. And we opened that concert with Dukas at Sorcerer's Apprentice as a little allusion to Fantasia and Disney. We welcome Nobu Tsuji, who I know simply as Nobu, who is this gentleman here, blind from birth and one of the most phenomenal virtuosos you will hear on the piano. I performed Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto with him a couple of years ago, and we filmed that and streamed that, and as of recent figures, just one of it online has received 1.5 million views. He is hugely popular because he's an extraordinary artist and an extraordinary man. And on that program, he'll perform Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto, and that'll be coupled up with Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra. So if you've been listening carefully, you'll remember they're both American composers. They both died American citizens. Bartók wrote his Concerto for Orchestra while living here in the US. So they're two American composers and a very American work, the Concerto for Orchestra, which, if you don't know it, does what it says on the can. It really shows off every part of the orchestra. It's part of my journey with the orchestra in this first season, like the Beethoven symphonies, of really digging in artistically and having a lot of fun. So I hope we can see you at that program. Saxophonist, that's the way we say it in England. Saxophonist, I can say it again. We say saxophonists, okay?
And aluminium.
And aluminium.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's the correct way to say it. But saxophonist. Can we say that together? Saxophony. There you go. Doesn't it sound nice? Either way, Jess Gillam plays the saxophone, and she's British as well. But she comes from the north of England, so she has a different accent from me. And she is she's an extraordinary player. You can look her up on YouTube, listen to some of her recordings. She's just a phenomenal saxophone player. She's also a radio personality and television personality in the United Kingdom, just brimming with charisma and fun and youth and vibrancy. She will be performing John Williams' suite from Catch Me If You Can called Escapades. If you've seen the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, it's a fantastic piece of music. And as in this season we're celebrating, or in that year rather, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Star Wars, I thought, why don't we just stick it on a classics program? So we're going to open the concert with Star Wars Suite, followed by Escapades by John Williams. So it's a John Williams first half. And then the second half, we look at a composer who John Williams paid homage to in some of his music, and that is Gustav Holst's Planets. So it's going to be a really wonderful program of some pretty powerful and exciting music. And
Out of this world.
Yeah, and then if that's not our hook for the program, then we got to reprint everything. A little later in the season, I think this is our final program of the season, we welcome an extraordinary artist. Her name is Karen Slack. She's an African-American soprano who has not only got an absolutely exquisite voice, she's so smart and brilliant and creative. And a couple of years back when because we plan a couple of seasons ahead, I was thinking about our theme, USA 250, and thinking about voices that it's important to represent on our stage. And I was researching some of the many wonderful African-American composers whose music I love and perform. And it led me down a little rabbit hole where a few of them converged for a performance in Chicago, the Chicago Symphony. And I read this article on the Chicago Symphony website about these composers who I love and a few others who I didn't know very well, who had been there on that day, and they'd all performed their music, and they dubbed themselves the Blacknificent Seven. Oh. And I thought, that is sensational. And I thought, what I want to do is reach out to that group, some of whom, like Jesse Montgomery, I knew already, or Carlos Simon, their music I've been performing quite regularly, and I want to see if we could commission them as a collective to write a piece of music. So got in touch with Jessie Montgomery, in fact, and she said, we don't have a collective management, blah, blah, blah. I got through to them, and they said, well, listen, we just want to let you know about a conversation we're having with Karen Slack, who had first brought them together on her podcast during COVID called Kiki Conversations. And they said, we're writing a song cycle for her, for piano and voice. And it's going to be called African Queens. And each of us, each of the composers, is going to write about the story of an African queen or warrior. And we'll choose our own, and then she'll sing this cycle. And I said, sign us up. We're going to commission the orchestral version of this. And so Pacific Symphony and then Artist Naples in Florida came on as co-commissioners of this cycle. And just a few short weeks ago in Florida, I performed the world premiere of it. The second performance of it and West Coast premiere will be happening here during this season, and it is a 35-minute song cycle. And just to give you an idea, Karen came out, we sang the first song, 4 minutes, and the audience burst into applause in Naples immediately as soon as she finished. And then we carried on. At the end, there were standing ovations. The warmth with which the music was received was extraordinary because it is brilliant. And each of these composers has their own unique voice, but somehow it stitches together into a work that feels like it belongs entirely together. She's extraordinary. It's a very, very powerful, very accessible, very engaging work, and I just hope you can come and explore it, because I know pride is a sin, but I'm just quietly proud to have been a small part of bringing into being a work which I think is going to be an enormously powerful part of the canon for decades and maybe centuries to come. So please do come and join us for that. Have I got any more cue cards? No, it says there's a question next.
Okay. And the question is, there's also a part of the season in which you are not with us, but you are responsible for bringing remarkable artists with us to us. And who are you looking forward to having the orchestra work with, and what can we look forward to?
Well, this is always the fun bit, because as a general rule, it's important to have better conductors conducting the orchestra than you when you're not there, just to keep the level pushing. So there's a whole bunch of conductors who you're going to really love. You don't have to turn up to my things, but come along to their things. So first we've got Ruth. I'm joking. You have to come to every one of my concerts. I thought you'd laugh, but everyone's like, okay. Ruth Reinhardt is going to be making her debut with the orchestra. She is a German conductor, I think in her late 30s. I have only heard wonderful things about her over the years from colleagues that I trust, from orchestras that I love, about working with her. She was, a few years back, she was the assistant conductor of Seattle Symphony, and she's currently serving as music director of Rhode Island Philharmonic, but she has a very active international career, and I can't wait to see how it all goes with our Pacific Symphony. She's going to be leading Dvorak's 6th Symphony, and she'll be working with the wonderful Joyce Yang, who lives here in this community, married to our principal bass, Richard Casarino, and I think they just had a baby, so that's wonderful news. So she's not only a great international soloist, she's a member of our community and our family here. So Ruth Reinhardt and Joyce Yang will be welcoming also for a debut Joanna Carnero, who has worked with the orchestra that I've been music director of for 11 years now, the National Arts Centre Orchestra in Canada. She's worked with them on several occasions, and they're a tough bunch. Whew. And they, again, that was a joke. They absolutely adore Joanna. She has such skills, such energy. She's an incredibly vibrant and brilliant conductor, and again, I can't wait to see her relationship blossom and flourish with our Pacific Symphony. She'll be performing Copland's Appalachian Spring and leading Tchaikovsky's piano concerto with the Van Cliburn competition gold medalist of 2025, Aristo Sham. That'll be a very beautiful concert. We then welcome also for his debut the godfather of Chinese music at the moment. He is an unbelievably influential man in China and has an incredibly exciting international career. Very, very brilliant man, Long Yu, and we're absolutely thrilled that he has found time in his busy schedule to be here with us at Pacific Symphony again to start what I hope will develop into a deep and warm and meaningful relationship with our musicians. That's the hope with every guest who comes, that it is the beginning of something deeper, because it's also wonderful for you to appreciate someone's skills on a debut and then to leave wanting more and for them to deepen their relationship with you. So I'm thrilled that he's coming. He'll be performing Rachmaninoff's symphonic dances with the orchestra. I'm jealous. I want to come and hear that.
You're welcome to come back.
Yeah, if I'm free, I will come back and just sit up there and enjoy, which is a rare privilege for me. Chigang Chen's Huang for piano and orchestra. Those of you Chinese speakers, please accept my apologies for everything I just said and the mispronunciations. But that'll be a very special concert. And then finally, Markus Stenz, one of Germany's great conductors who has had a long and storied career, will be joining us to conduct Stravinsky's Petrushka. Stravinsky, of course, also, he spent, in fact, the largest number of years of his life living here in California, because he moved around a lot as a young man. But he spent the final quarter or third of his life living here, and will be performing Petrushka. Markus Stenz will be conducting Petrushka, and Inmo Yang will be performing Sibelius' violin concerto on that program. So we have really wonderful guest conductors who will be performing with wonderful guest artists. It's going to be very special.
And there are some special nights. I mean, as you said, there's some one-time only opportunities and experiences, and those are pretty profound as well.
They are. We're going to be opening, the very opening concert of my first full season will be welcoming Josh Bell to join us, and that's a really fun program. He will perform a concerto for us, and then we will have a half of music that celebrates like a series of sort of appetizers. What's going to be happening the rest of the season? We'll be having, they're all American composers, so we'll have by Joan Tower, her fanfare for the uncommon woman. We'll have Florence Price's Andante. We'll have Bartok's Romanian folk dances. We'll have Candide Overture by Leonard Bernstein. We'll have Gershwin, music by Gershwin. So you'll get little glimpses of what will follow in the season. And I think the vibe of that concert is simply going to be celebratory. It's going to feel like a gala. Josh, of course, the consummate American artist, his career is extraordinary. And my kids, actually, I'm going to be touring with Josh in a couple of weeks. We're going to be in Florida together, in Canada together. And my eldest boy, Sasha, who plays the violin, I used to read to him as he was going to sleep. He's only 7 still, but I used to read to him The Man with the Violin, the story about Josh Bell going into the subway with his $5 billion violin and earning...
With a hat?
Well, yeah, with a hat. And he earned like $8 because no one realized that it's the greatest violinist with the greatest violin. It just goes to show and the point of the book is that beauty is all around us, and the little boy in the book is the only one who stops to listen, because everyone else's head is down, trying to get to work, trying to think about, and he's the one who stops and listens, and his life is lit up. And then his mum yanks him away, and they head home, and later on that night, the radio is playing, and he hears the same music. Mm-hmm. And the back announcer says, that was Josh Bell playing one of the most expensive violins in the world. And he says, "Mommy, that's the music we heard in the subway." It's a beautiful story. And so my little boy, who's going to fortunately travel with me when we're on tour with Josh, he's going to meet him for the first time. I think he's already a little bit nervous about that, but that'll be fabulous. And there's another special later in the season where another friend and longtime collaborator, Manny Axe, will be joining me to perform, and us, most importantly, to perform Beethoven's 4th piano concerto. That kind of kicks off the Beethoven anniversary year for us. It'll be January. And I've married that up with a Mozart symphony, which is, Beethoven had this wonderful habit of identifying the best in practice that already existed for the things he was going to do. So he looked at Haydn's quartets, he looked at Mozart's piano concertos, and so on and so forth, and thought, okay, so where did they leave off? What have they been doing well? I'm going to start there. And so it's a little nod by having one of Mozart's late symphonies. There's a little bit of a nod to Beethoven's practices. But we'll include also 2 wonderful pieces by living composers. Sami Musa, who's a Canadian composer, wrote a piece called Elysium, which for obvious reasons speaks also to Beethoven's sort of vision of the world and life. This piece has become a modern classic. It's Christian Thielemann over in Germany, or there's a whole bunch of really very, very fine interpreters who are not normally associated with contemporary music, who have really grabbed and run with this piece. It is incredible. It starts with this huge orchestral chord that then diminishes and grows again. It's like a wash of sound. It's almost physical. And it's a sort of 10, 11-minute piece. And then another work by Ansuk Chin called Subito Conforto, which he wrote as an homage to Beethoven, a shortish work. It's sort of 4 minutes long. But there'll be two modern counterweights to the Beethoven experience on that program that includes Manny and Mozart. So yeah, those will be specials, if you see what I mean.
Needless to say, there's been an enormous amount of thought put into this entire season and the opportunities that we're all going to be able to enjoy. What do you hope your audience, your musicians, and your guest artists, feel and understand at the end of such a profound season?
Well, I mentioned when we started talking that I like to think of big picture themes first when I'm thinking about a season. Because for me, music, what we do on stage, is not a solitary undertaking over here. There's buy food, eat your meals, look after your family, go to work, earn enough to live, read a book, do some exercise over here, and then if you've got a little bit of time, there's music over here. But rather, music for me it speaks to every part of the human experience. So when I think of the Beethoven symphonies, I don't think those are lovely notes. I think that's an extraordinary human expression of something that everybody in this room shares. How can we evolve? How can we change? How can we be better? How can we have more freedom as individuals while contributing ever more greatly to the collective? How can we ensure that others do well while we succeed? Can we create a more equitable, a more free, a more optimistic society? Those are the questions that Beethoven asked himself, and his language for answering that was music. And if you come in with an open heart and an open mind, and if you allow yourself also to get into that headspace, then the experience of coming to the concert hall isn't just a kind of binary, do I like or dislike the sound of the music, but rather, okay, this is an attempt to grapple with nuanced emotions, feelings, ideas, philosophies that are sometimes very profound, and where you might seek out answers in conversation with loved ones or great friends, or you might seek some kind of spiritual answers in whatever faith or spirituality you have, or the endorphins of sport, which is one for me as well, where you suddenly feel lifted. We all have our avenues, but for me, music is that. If you're looking for hope, it can give you answers. If you need to understand loss better, it can give you moments of catharsis and also empathy. Saying in music, you know what, there's composers who felt exactly what you felt, and they have the ability to articulate it that might make you cry in the deepest part of you, but it's going to be cathartic as well, and everything in between. So to big picture answer your question, I want us to enter into the season in the knowledge that we're going to take many different kinds of journeys together. Some of them will simply be entertaining and diverting and joyful and easy. Some of them might be life-changing, like the Second Symphony of Mahler. Some of them, like the journey through the Beethoven symphonies, might also be perspective-changing, and also bucket list. Have you heard Beethoven symphonies? Yeah, I heard them all live in one go. Have you? That's a pretty great thing to be able to say at a dinner party, right? So this space, there's a reason why certain things about a concert hall mimic spaces like sports stadia or great religious spaces, because the individual kind of melts away and should melt away. For us on stage too, great performance is when you're in flow, We're not thinking about you. We're not thinking about each other. It is happening, and we are acting on it. It is acting on us, but you're in a flow state. There is no way to play Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto thinking about every one of your fingers. You let it flow. And where accidents happen, where mistakes happen for musicians, is when the slow brain, the Daniel Kahneman slow brain, suddenly kicks in. And you're like, uh-oh, I'm moving my fingers. It is flow state. And in this space, I just hope that in the coming season, we as a collective will have lots of opportunities to enter into that most important part of the human experiences, which is sharing physical, live space together, not just screens. And believe me, I'm as guilty as anybody of being on screens. But with every day that passes, with every development in technology, which is also extraordinary and wonderful, I reaffirm to myself the unique importance of coming into spaces like this and sharing experiences that are not immediately tangible, but are incredibly real. Just to finish that thought, often when I'm asked about the value of music, I like to point out that I'm sure it's evident to you all, but I think it's important to reassert in this context. Whereas we can measure and define in terms of the space it takes up and its purpose, a chair, a table, we can put a value on what it's worth to buy. The real currency of consciousness is love and fear and hope and melancholy and everything in between, the words of experience and emotion. That is the currency of life. This is the currency of the material world, but in terms of our consciousness, that's the currency. And there are ever fewer avenues for us to give ourselves over to that, because life is so busy. Life is so busy and to a degree blinkered. And again, for me, this space represents that opportunity to come together, sometimes with undefined goals, to recognize the fact that we need these moments in our lives where we just let emotion and experience run without having to define everything. So at the biggest level, that's my hope, that we can just, starting with this coming season, go on this journey consciously together and say that this is a very, very special place to share.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pacific Symphony's Artistic and Music Director, Alexander Shelley.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you, Maria, very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, in an artistic and music director, I think we've not only engaged a great artist, but a spiritual guide for all of us. What an amazing conversation. Thank you to Maria Hall-Brown for her beautiful interview. I just want to say, I don't know about you, we have many concerts left this season, but I am really anxious to get to next year. What an incredible season he's planned, and congratulations to Alexander for assembling such an extraordinary range of music and offerings to all of us. I hope all of you will engage. For those of you who are subscribers, you might note that the Beethoven Festival, for example, will require you to add concerts to your series so that you can experience the entire flow of that, or Joshua Bell or Emmanuel Axe. You can start renewing today. We have people in the lobby. We also have online. You'll be getting packets. If you are not a subscriber yet, I would say this might be a pretty special moment to join the symphony journey for an entire season and experience the arc, because I've never worked with a music director or seen one that thinks in arcs like Alexander does. I want to thank our very special volunteer group that greeted you in the lobby, that helps us so much throughout the season. Thank you to the Pacific Symphony volunteers. Really appreciate you. There were a number of members of the orchestra here. We want to thank them for coming, of course, the fabulous musicians. You're going to hear Don Quixote this week and the Beethoven Violin Concerto. Carl's back on the podium, so it's a very special week for us. Thank you to the musicians. And I particularly want to thank Dana Long. She's our Vice President of Marketing and Communications, and she put this whole thing together with a number of important helpers. So please thank Dana for her great leadership. And also Janelle Crewley and Rochelle Rowe, our publicists, who have put a wonderful press corps here brought a corps here together. And then for those of you watching online, I just want to say thank you for spending time on your screen. It's an invitation to come here live. And then thank you to all of you. I mean, I know it's a Wednesday morning. You waited in line patiently. I was amazed at how long the line was for coffee and a Danish. That's very impressive. So we've learned something. But anyway, thank you for being here. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great